Great, thank you.
Finally we can see things.
So, try to plug it in again. And just to be sure to correctly pronounce your names. It's always a challenge.
Give it a try. Give it a try.
Okay, Varsha Kamble.
Okay.
Perfect.
Just tell me if it's wrong. I'll
It's
try
fine.
to.
It's Kamble.
Kamble.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Now this should be tricky.
And Abhishek Vijra.
Vijra.
Vijra. Okay. So, I apologize in advance, just in case I completely said it wrong.
It's all fine. It's all fine. Okay, I guess it's. Should we begin or not? So should we begin? It's 2 already?
Yeah. So, just plug it in.
Yeah, perfect.
Do you want to borrow the clicker?
Yeah, I guess, but would it work? This will help.
This bag does not stay in the place, so just use this.
So just check if the clicker works.
Continue.
There's absolutely certainly something wrong. Okay, so this guy says. Okay. Varsha.
No.
So that's the reason we are 2. The clicker won't work. So one guy will do this, the other guy will do that.
Okay. If you wish, there is stable cable connection for internet. If you need it.
Maybe
Yeah.
in my examples if I have time.
But we don't have this. We need adapter.
I don't know why. Now it's not moving.
आगे जा रही है.
Okay.
It's not moving properly. See? Okay,
Maybe
you just need to click this, okay? You just need to
alright,
click this,
sure.
okay? Boom, 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 boom. Just like click, 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 and click, and this goes out. For now, I need to search.
What?
I hate my Mac. This is. Okay. You just need to click here, okay? If you go here.
लगा के देख लो एक बार.
No, that's okay. But you can, right? Click, 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 click. Okay, that's very good. Okay. Okay. Shall we? I guess are we good? I guess we have all the
Yeah.
time.
Oh, we are.
Time.
Okay, so welcome to another session, new work order in MOL, ActiveMQ Artemis, presented by Varsha and Abhishek Vijra.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Abhishek Vijra from India Consulting Team, and my job is to look after the application and development efforts as far as the consulting team is concerned with our customers. So, what we do is we go implement the Red Hat middleware suite and, of course, the OCP, OpenShift. I look after the practice of application and development. And
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Varsha, and I'm working in Red Hat as a senior technical support engineer.
so today we have decided to talk about a message-oriented middleware, and the vehicle which we have taken is Artemis, because Artemis is particularly pretty interesting. Am I audible by any chance? Yeah. Okay, so Artemis is actually pretty interesting in many ways. So we'll just begin with it. Okay, but before me getting into this, how many of us have actually played with, implemented middleware messaging services? Sweet. Anyone saw Artemis? Nice. Perfect. So again, just a customary, this is basically message-oriented middleware. It's a software or a hardware infrastructure supporting sending and receiving messages between distributed systems. So this is a basic definition, and that's where we are. Why we use middleware or message-oriented middleware is for the asynchronity, routing, and of course some transformation, like if you are aware with frameworks like Kamble, which actually easily natively integrate with messaging services. So these are the three use cases at the core why we are using MOM, why we use MOM. And as I said, Artemis is something which we want to talk about with you, and this is version 2.x which we are focusing on. There is a difference between 1.x and 2.x. Of course, this is actually a combination of ActiveMQ and HornetQ, and HornetQ code base was donated to Apache by Red Hat. Again, with Artemis coming in, we also do see the implementation of JMS 2.0 specifications completely. I guess a lot of us was waiting for JMS 2.0, I guess, because one interesting fact is that every Java spec over the years have seen lots of changes except the JMS. It was JMS 1.x, and it was throughout till 2 years back we got into JMS 2.0. So how JMS simplifies life is what Varsha is going to tell you. Okay. But I'm more about going to talk about Artemis, and again, it is designed for performance, and there is actually non-blocking communication using NetI. Anyone aware of NetI? Yes. Perfect. And fast high performance NIO journal, which is the part of, and faster libIO for especially for Linux, which we use for journal paging. Well, again, so what's interesting about Artemis is the fact is JMS agnostic. So this idea needs to be understood well, that it is not only JMS, it is lots of other things beyond JMS. So you can use different protocols to interact with Artemis. So it is protocol agnostic messaging server designed to be used with multiple different protocols. So no JMS only. Then what I would like to also talk about, that since this is protocol agnostic and it's not JMS only, how does that? So if you look at this particular diagram, we do see that we do have a dedicated protocol manager which gets its operations from core protocol, and even for JMS, if you observe, the JMS messages are actually converted and then, or rather JMS operations are converted and then sent to the Artemis server. So it's actually a JMS facade which is created over the Artemis so that you can use JMS if you are coming from the Java background and if you want to use JMS. But since I said that it's not only JMS, then I should give you an idea that then what can be other ways to interact with Artemis. And one good way to interact with Artemis is Artemis Core But before that, we need to understand what actually Artemis Core is. 3 basic concepts: address, queues, and routings, or rather routing types, which we call that. Address would be the messaging endpoints. Like, for example, in JMS, if you would need to call a queue or maybe look up a queue particularly, you would actually point to that particular queue. But here, you need to have the address. Then, behind every address would be a queue, and you should have particular routing types. These routing types are responsible for taking your messages from the address and putting it into a particular queue or queues, or rather topics. So this is the core of Artemis. So the idea is simple, that if I have an address and there are queues behind the address and I need to send a message to a queue using Artemis Core, this is Node.js, then what I would do is I would use, to my disposal, I have 2 types of routing types, and those are anycast and multicast. I will show you when we get into hack the Artemis. So anycast would be that, the special use case for anycast would be a point-to-point communication. If you would like to send a message to a queue, to a particular queue, you would use anycast in your broker.xml, and you will mention that particular queue. And the best part is, since Artemis is actually built on plain old Java objects, even if you don't mention the queue, and if your consumer is there, it would automatically create the queue for you. The only thing is that you have to mention that's anycast, that is point-to-point communication. Again, multicast is the use case of multicast. One is, of course, the topics, the publisher and subscriber model, as we know it. The second use case also is that if you want to send messages to different queues, also that can also be a use case. I'll of course try to show you how these things are configured in broker.xml so that it's pretty clear for everyone. Now, since I'm saying again and again, this is not JMS, but so how would I interact with the code directly? Like, for example, if I'm a developer, I would need to leverage Artemis, but not via JMS APIs, maybe directly via the core. So this is how we do that. You need to get hold of server locator and create an ActiveMQ client. Then, of course, you need to create a factory. From factory, if you have written your JMS-based producers or consumers, you must be aware that from factory, you would need to get a session, then you would need to create a producer, and then you would need to create a message. Again, the API is fluid, easy to understand, but not JMS. Again. As I said, not JMS, and I'm again saying it. So there are multiple protocols which Artemis would support, AMQP clients. This is an important protocol for you if you are someone who is trying to leverage Artemis or maybe any messaging service or maybe any MOM. Then you would need these protocols like for example, if your producer code is in C++, Python, maybe JavaScript, if you get some time, maybe I have a fancy Java script-based chat application, which we can see. Then MQTT clients, Stomp is something which is still supported in Artemis, OpenWire, of course, which we are extensively using. And of course, the one which I just showed you right now, the Artemis Core, which is something new. We very well understand that there are different ways to getting into or maybe leveraging your MOM, especially Artemis. But again, JMS is heavily used. How many of us are Java developers here? Like Java developers? Okay, so now this will be good because JMS APIs are the one. Through JMS APIs also you can leverage your MOM. And as I showed you, again, while you go through this session, please understand that even if you're using JMS APIs for your producers and consumers, you need to understand that it's just a facade over the Artemis Core. Okay, it's not native to Artemis. So Varsha, my colleague, would walk you through this and
Okay, so let's get back to one step back and let's see what is a JMS and let's understand what JMS is. So JMS stands for Java Message Service and it gives us it provides the services to send, receive and create messages. So it allows the Java programmers to be loosely coupled and asynchronous. That means you need not to be online for to receive or to send the messages all the time. So just who are unaware of a JMS, for them just the basic concepts of a JMS. So this is a queue and it uses to send a message from one person to another person, or you can say from one point to another point. So in this case, if you see, if a client wants to send a message to, if a client wants to send a message to a client 2, it will send a message to a queue, and the client 2 will consume the messages and it will send the acknowledgement to the queue, and once the queue get acknowledgement, it will delete the message from a queue until and unless it will process the messages which are in queue for client 2 until and unless it get consumed. So next is the topic. So this topic is, if you want to send a message to multiple clients, in that case you need to use a topic. For example, how many of you are checking the shared messages? Trading. So if you check trading messages, in that case you need the updated messages. You don't need the previous messages, or you don't need the share market price of the previous what you call as the previous what is the share market price of a previous trade, or what is the you just need the current price. In that case, it uses the topic. So if the client sends the message to a topic, whoever the subscriber are listening to the client, whoever the subscriber listening to the topic, they will get the messages. If there is any new client, it will just manage the messages. So this is the classic API. The classic API is the JMS 1.1 specifications, and it is called as a classic API because, yes, it is classic API. So in classic API, just to send or to receive messages, what we need a connection factory, we need a connection, we need a session, we need a producer, we need a consumer, destination, and the message. So what we do to send a simple message, what we need a connection factory object that creates the connection. Then using that connection, we create a session, and using that session, we create a message producer, we create message consumer, and we create a message. Just so that just to send one simple message, we need 5 objects. So this is example. This is a simple example to send a message. In that case, in this simple example, what we do, we create a connection from the connection factory, then session, and session. Using that session, we create the message producer. Using the session, we create the text message, and we send the message to the queue, which we have mentioned while creating the session. So what's wrong in this code? Nothing. It's just a code we need to write, and we need to create 5 objects to send a message. So here it is. Connection, session, producer, text message, and we need to close the connection. To simplify all this, the Java community process develops the JMS 2.0 specifications. So if you check the JMS 2.0 specifications, it uses the connection factory, then JMS context, JMS producer, JMS consumer, and the message. And this, they omit the connection factory, or you can say connection and the session object. And if you check the JMS context, it is what do you call it as? It's just a replacement of message producer, and JMS consumer is a replacement of message consumer. So if you check the code which we need to send a message, this is a simple message. This is a simple code which we need to send a message. In that case, if you check, it uses the try resource block, which is again the feature of Java 7, and using that Java 7 feature, what we did, we just created a context using the connection factory, and using that connection factory, we created a JMS context object, and using that JMS context object, we just send the message. We don't have to create the session, we don't have to create the connection. It is just a simple 4-line code we have optimized from JMS 1.1 specification to JMS 2.0 specifications. Again, in this code, we don't have, as we are using the try resource block of the feature of Java 7, we don't have to close the connections which we have created. So if you check the step by step difference of a classic API and simplified API, you can see the connection and session objects are replaced by a single JMS context object. It's connection, session, just we need to use the JMS object, JMS context. No need to specify both the, while creating the session, when you are using JMS 1.1 specification, we need to pass two parameters. One is the transaction mode, and the second one is the acknowledgement mode. In JMS 2.0 specification, while creating the connection, we just need to specify the acknowledgement mode. If you didn't specify, it is by default the transacted. Again, with JMS 1.1 specifications, to send a single message, we need to create the producer object, we need to create the text message object, and we need to set the text, and then we need to call the method as producer.send and whatever text message we have. In JMS 2.0, like using simplified API, we just need to write a one-line code to send a message. It's just context.createProducer, send, queue, and whatever text, the queue name, and whatever text we want to send, like whatever the text message we have, we need to pass it as an argument. Yeah, as I said before, we're using the Java 7 feature, we can use a try with resource syntax, and if you use that, there is no need to close the objects which are created. So in classic API, yeah, when we create the connection, we have to close that connection, otherwise there will be a connection leak. In simplified API, use this try resource syntax, and just that will close your whatever objects we have created. So this is the feature JMS context implements the interface which is introduced by Java 7, as called as java.lang.autoclosable. So you want to come?
Okay. I guess so. What Varsha tried to explain was that the transition from JMS 1.x to 2.x makes life much simpler, developer friendly, and those were the things which you can use with JMS 2.x API. Then maybe we'll come back again to Artemis. We will try to see some features which Artemis you can use with Artemis. So instead of kind of looking at the features or talking about features, because there are plenty of them, what we have tried to do is that we'll try to maybe hack it down in front of you, maybe show you some features straight away right from my system. So yeah. So one cool thing which we were talking about was the this particular example which I'm about to show you actually talks about using JavaScript, and using JavaScript you can leverage your Artemis. Maybe you can send messages through and fro on a queue, and we would try to make a chat program and send chat messages from one end to another, and using Artemis. And the best part about this is that you are right now using Artemis Core, leveraging Artemis Core, using JavaScript, and let's try to run this example. So if you see this, what I'm actually using, there is something called as acceptor, which I'm using here, that is actually in VM. So right now, since
bigger?
Sorry?
Can you make the font bigger?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I need to increase my fonts, but my fonts are very bad. Hmm?
Just click on, double click on this. Save कर लो उसको.
I'm trying to do it. Can you see this? Or like still?
It's too small.
Too small.
Font size.
Trying to increase the font size.
Control plus or Control Shift plus doesn't work.
Yeah. No, somehow. Nope. Somehow it's not working in my ID.
इसको unplug करके लगा. इसको unplug करके वापस.
No, somehow it's not working in my ID. I'm sorry, somehow the fonts.
Preferences for this.
Maybe. And
Somewhere should be code style or something. Code editor.
no.
Just type there in the search box.
No, I can actually increase the font size straight away instead of the editor. But somehow I need to see this.
Or just type edit.
Yeah, that's the thing. Editor, accessibility, and then should happen quickly.
और one thing copy paste text bar है उसको ये कर दो.
Okay, so somehow I'm not able to increase my fonts. So, and this is low. Search. No. Yeah, I'm not finding it.
May I help you?
Yeah, you can. Just not simply finding it. Generally, apparently my control works, but I don't know what's wrong with this.
Go to the preferences.
Yeah,
Here, window preference. Yeah. Go to top. Oh, it's so small.
Yeah, it's actually HDMI has.
What is it? Textures? Go to these options.
Somehow
Okay.
the HDMI has color and fonts and
Try it.
preferences.
Yeah. And text font below.
Yes,
No.
text.
Oh. No, it's not that.
No.
No.
Generally, this spawns big time for me. Suddenly, I don't know why it's not happening today.
इसको बाहर remove करके ये कर लो.
Nope.
So,
Sorry, guys.
ये कर लो.
And what about changing the screen resolution?
Let me try, but that would kind of will not be that right option.
इसको कॉपी कर लो किसी टेक्स्ट पैड में ऐसे दिखा दो.
Yeah, no, doesn't work like that. Display. Does this work? Maybe. Does this look? I'm sorry for this. Okay, so yeah, let's carry on. So we are using the NVM protocol here, and what basically we are doing here is that we are using Ajax, and with Ajax we are just on the click we are sending the message to the queue. Okay, so maybe I'll run this first and show you. So this boots up a Jetty server in my Palm, and I require a Jetty server because I'm using a lot of REST in my application. So by the time it boots up, let me also show you the web.xml, and this is the web.xml where actually I am using the REST-EC Bootstrap, and of course these two important aspects, the ActiveMQ Artemis REST integration with ActiveMQ Bootstrap listener, and of course REST messaging Bootstrap listener. What has happened? Why is this is the common case whenever you want to show demo. I got a no class found. This should work. Let me give it a try once again. And why? My example did not run. And Jetty run. And this should run. I'm getting no class found defs. Well. This is really bad, but somehow my demo has gone wrong again. Class found dev. Okay. I don't know why it is playing like this. No. Is something wrong I did on the no. I guess my demo has again gone wrong, so I would show you another one which uses the HTTP protocol to send a message. HTTP transport. Again, to enable HTTP transport to send a message via HTTP protocol, you would need to enable the connector, that is HTTP enabled equals to true. And when you use this via HTTP protocol, you can send the message to the broker. So this should work at least. Well, this is embarrassing because at the time of the demo, failed. Let me install this straight away. Right. So at least this worked because maybe. So you would see if you note that here we are using HTTP transport to send a message to the Artemis, not standard JMS or something else, and you would observe that the message was sent and the message was received. And again, if I look at the code, it's pretty simple, straightforward code. The only idea is that when I'm creating my connection factory, I'm enabling on the open wire, and I'm telling the open wire that, hey, the messages would use the HTTP protocol. When I say HTTP enabled. So this is the crux. REST is again using CF. You would create your create connection, then the standard as Varsha told you, and we'd go about creating everything. Do we have some time?
5 minutes for talk and 10 minutes for Q&A.
So before I end, I have an interesting aspect. So how many of us know about the heuristic transactions, or the state of a transaction called heuristic? So there are basically two states which we all know. One is the rollback, the other happens to be commit. But heuristic is a phase where you actually don't know in what phase is the transaction actually is. Neither it's committed and neither it is rolled back. It's somewhere which you just don't know from the system. So in Artemis, there is a way, if your transaction end up into a heuristic state, you can leverage Artemis GMX and maybe send an operation to Artemis Core telling it to either roll back or commit a particular transaction. in the example which I would like to show you, and if that works, and if I'm lucky today, that I would send two messages to Artemis. I'll send hello, and I'll send world, two different messages. And then I would maybe bring them in a heuristic state, means I would not commit or roll them back. And then the message number 2, which is world, I will use JMX, plug into Artemis using JMS and beans, and I would commit or roll back it, or maybe rather commit it. So you would see that as a result, the message world would be received, but not hello, because hello still is in heuristic state. The reason why I'm talking about this, or maybe I want to show you this, is that here you have an ability using Artemis Core to work on your transactions even if they are in heuristic state. So we'll try to see this. This is HA heuristic code. I hope if you can see the code. This is pretty big, so maybe I'll walk you through quickly on this. I'm just creating an example queue, and again, I'm creating, please note this is an HA heuristic transaction example, so I'm using transacted sessions. So if you would see here that I'm looking up to the XA factory, initial context is something which I'm using, and I'm using a XA session. Again, of course, this is auto acknowledge just for the labs. And here I create these two messages, hello and world. Of course, with every message, since I need to identify that them through the GMX MBean, I would add an XID to that so that I can go and pick that message and do whichever operation I want to do on that particular message. So it's just a dummy class which I just created, that is XID. And then if you would see, I have set, I begin my transaction work here, I generate. Now I prepare, so a transaction which is going to be committed or going to be rolled back, and in that state, so we call it as a transaction in a prepare state. So I'm preparing my transactions here. Then what I try to do is I roll back one transaction, as I mentioned, and I commit. So here, this point, I leverage my JMX. Till here, I try to put them into a heuristic state. Now again, my both the transaction, the message 1, which has hello, the message 2, which has world, are in heuristic state. Here, I go ahead and I leverage my JMS. I get hold of my messages. One, I commit. The other, I roll back. And after doing that, you would observe when I run this code, both the messages are in the heuristic state. One would be committed, the other would be rolled back via the JMS console. So I hope this again doesn't say that it doesn't work. Sorry? No, my messages are still not sent. Sorry, my bad. I had put that on verify. So no, stop it. Yeah. So as you would observe here, that the messages which I had sent, the messages hello was sent, and the message world was sent, but after plugging into the Artemis Core via GMX and making one transaction, because both the transactions are in heuristic state, making one transaction roll back and the other transaction as commit. The world was the one which we committed, and here you see the message received is world. I guess with this example and one bad example, I finished my talk. Thank you. Any questions?
Which client did you use for this transaction?
Sorry?
Which Artemis client did you use to communicate with?
Standard JMS Artemis clients.
So the
James.
core protocol.
Sorry?
So the core protocol.
No, in this example, the one which I showed, I did not use the core protocol. I used the JMS APIs to produce and consume the messages. The only thing was I used the GMX APIs of Artemis to hook into Artemis and do and
GMS uses which protocol under?
It's core protocol.
so again, yeah, I totally understand.
Because you showed us the slide where you showed the protocols,
True.
AQP and stuff like that.
True.
But there were two JMS protocols, or three if you count also the Artemis. Yes, the old MQ6.
It's a James 1.1
But
and James
if you
2.0.
want to communicate with JMS, you can use the NQP, the old ActiveMQ, and then there is the new one. So I was confusing which.
So this one was GMS, and again, GMS APIs which we are using here are nothing but these GMS APIs are not native to Artemis.
I know this.
Yes.
But underneath the JMS can use all of these three protocols or not?
Right now
Oh,
we
yes.
use NVM protocol.
Right now we are using NVM for this example. For this example.
Is there an Artemis support for virtual destinations like in ActiveMQ?
Right now it's not, and that's something which there is a feature request for that, and that is something I'm bringing up. But right now with this version, Artemis 2.5, we don't. Anything else? Thank you very much, and thank you very much for bearing with me. How my code blow up, you know, I've spent the whole week writing this code. My code blew up here at the time. Just मुझे तो हमने गलती की ना, उसके class not found आ गया. कुछ हुआ है गड़बड़. Thank you.
You Varsha? You work for Musharraf? Okay. You are on support, right? Jago support. Okay. And Visa, I work for Jago security.
Okay.
Yeah, in the support team. I report to Sean O'Callaghan.
Okay.
And Radomir Plashi, the new manager. So I saw the name, I say, oh, this name, I'm familiar with the name. On the IRC, app support, and the pages. I don't know anything about JMS, but I sometimes I see some people think JMS, SPR JMS, take this case. Okay, yeah, it was a nice. I like this slide actually. Helped me. So I can download the slides there. Okay,
Work for security. Security is BI. You work for security.
Security is yes, they gave us security and ESA.
Okay. You are in Bordeaux or?
No, I'm in France.
France.
Yes, I live in France. In Alps area. Between Italy, Switzerland and France. The south is, yeah. When are we meeting?
We are here.
We are here for some time. We'll see you at party today.
Okay, today.
Party?
Yeah. This evening I will go, yeah.
We'll catch you later.
Yeah, sure. We will see that.
So, do you want to use HDMI or VGA?
HDMI.
Let's do that.